This is what you get when you don't coordinate your speeches, Manolio. We overlap a lot in our message. But let me first thank the Pan-Carpathian Foundation, its board for this honor, but also for their hard work and dedication. I didn't realize it was 33 years, but it, as we all know, it's not easy to keep something going for 2 years, 3 years, and to keep something going for 33 years with all the changes that are occurring in society and with generations that value different traditions. I think it's a testament to their hard work, to their diligence, and to their strong belief not only in our culture, but in education. And I think this is one of the best things that PKF does, but they do many things, and I just want to recognize the entire board for that. I also want to congratulate the graduates. This is your event. And the actual students who are here, thank you for applying for the scholarship that I've created in my parents' memory. When I suggested last year to my uncle Fritzo Bozos that they should have a female speaker, I didn't expect that they were going to ask me to speak. But what I've learned over the years is it's really important that there be female and male role models for women, because I used to think I wanted to do it on my own and I didn't want to be treated as a separate class. But I recognize that we all have role models, male and female. Most of mine early in my career were male because I was in a male-dominated field. But now that I'm in higher ed, there's more women, and it's important to have a support network. And so I'm honored to be here today. But then I saw the flyer, and I'm like, Athena? Juxtaposing me with Athena, that's a pretty tall order. And then I, of course, Googled to see more about Athena. I certainly knew she was the goddess of war. She sits, or her temple sits on the top of the Acropolis and the Parthenon, so I have a lot of love for our Greek tradition and for what she represents. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some of what I think are some words of advice for the graduates. And when I think about my career and what shaped it, I have to think about my parents. They set an example for my brother, sister, and I that was deep-rooted in our family, our faith, not just our church, but our broader community. Not just the Greek community or Carpathian community, our broader community. And a commitment to education. There was no question that we were going to college. It was a given. That wasn't always easy for them or for us, because some of what we wanted to do took us out of the nearby neighborhood or community of where we lived. So I wanted to study architecture, and believe it or not, at the time there were no accredited programs of architecture in the state of New Jersey. NJIT was just starting, it wasn't yet accredited. So for me that meant leaving home, and for you guys maybe that sounds foreign, but girls didn't go away to college. They commuted, they didn't even live away at a nearby college. At least Carpathian girls. Maybe Greek girls had a little more latitude. But it wasn't just that decision. There were many people, and I remember my mother telling me a couple of stories, who actually verbally criticized my parents for that decision that they made. She told me once she went to the PKF, or the Carpathian dance, at Schützen Park, and a woman walked across the entire dance floor to talk to her, and she said, Akusa, I'll say it in Greek and in English, Oti estiles την κόρη σου μακριά και λυπήθηκα. I heard you sent your daughter far away, and I was really sorry to hear that. So she said she stopped going to the Honoree until we were around, because she didn't really want to have her decision or their decision, because my father, of course, was a big part of it, second guessed. When I wanted to study a semester in Greece and then travel 5 weeks with a Eurail through Europe, my mother was terrified. My father said, let her go, it'll be the best experience of her life. So I went. She had a candlelit in church the entire time I was away. There were no cell phones, no internet, none of that. I mean, literally once a week I'd go to the telephone, the version of Audet in whatever country I was in, to call home and to say, everything was okay. And then after graduation, when I was offered the job in New York City government, there was a residency requirement. So that was the next big step. Instead of them saying I can't, take that job, they not only said I could take the job, but they helped me buy my first apartment. So instead of renting, so many of my friends, and several of them are in the audience today, were a little envious about how reasonable my parents were, how I think they combined the best of Greek, Carpathian, and American heritage. We are rooted in an incredible history and civilization. We should be really proud of that. We have a deep, rich cultural tradition in Galapagos. And we live in this land of opportunity and equality, where just because you're a girl, you should have the same opportunities that everybody has. So I'm really thankful that my parents never limited us because of cultural norms, because of what, doprepi, or what people say. They trusted us and they supported us in achieving our ideas. And each of us, and if you don't know it, you should ask your parents or your grandparents, has such a story. We all, they took tremendous risks. My grandparents, one set went to Africa, one set came to America. They lived 3 families in a house behind the Freehold Diner. 3 families in one house to make a better life for their family and for their kids. And they were difficult, long hours, and tight living conditions, away many times from family and home. And I think we owe them and their sacrifices and their legacies to follow in their footsteps with passion and make a contribution, as Manoli referenced, to society and to our community, and to pass what we have received forward to the next generation, to your friends, to your colleagues, and to your nieces and nephews, godchildren and children. So for me, it was a love of environment, it was a love of the arts, it was a love of cities that led me to architecture and then landscape architecture. I was really good at math and science. My sister was the great English major. Those majors allowed me to find something that I loved and that I was passionate about. And when you do that, it's not just a job, it's a career, it's a passion. And working on it and working towards your goals aren't tedious. So you dig deep, find out what that passion is for you. What I thought would be a 2-year career in city government turned into a 22-year career in government. You don't always know where you're going to go or what you're going to do. If you had told me I'd be doing today, back then doing what I'm doing today, I would have had no idea. You have to be open to the opportunities and take a chance. Sometimes the path is not clear, it's a little fuzzy, but it feels right. Listen to the advice of others, talk to others, even your parents. But one thing I learned, and I continue to learn, that I don't think it's the technical expertise, you need it, that makes the difference in how you advance in your career. I believe it's the soft skills, it's the human resource skills, it's communication, it's collaboration, it's respecting your peers, your colleagues, it's learning to work together, to be able to communicate in writing and verbally. I spend a lot of time on teaching my staffs those skills, because I do think that we live in a society that you don't succeed just based on your individual accomplishments. You have to work in groups, you have to work in teams. So it turns out that's a really valuable skill, and people come knocking on your door. And so despite challenges, because sometimes I think that we think that everything, because I'm a VP of facilities, is easy along the way. I don't want to leave you with that impression, because there were a lot of bumps in the road. You know, I got a job right out of college. I was laid off within 6 months. You know, I was passed over 2 times for jobs that I wanted, the commissioner job and the senior vice president job at the World Trade Center Memorial Foundation. But although I was disappointed, I continued to work. I didn't show it. I complained and, you know, talked to my trusted advisors and friends and colleagues. And before you know it, I prayed. Before you know it, another opportunity came along. So I became Memorial Design Director, because I had a colleague from my city career who called me up and said, we have a position. I kept in touch with her. Same thing with Penn. I was really starting to feel the wear and tear of working on that memorial project. There was a lot of politics that was change in governor, change in mayor. I just didn't know if I had the stomach for it, and I started just talking to people, and I interviewed at 6 other universities before I got an offer at Penn. So the jobs don't necessarily come with the first try. You just got to keep trying and be diligent and use your network and take a chance when it feels right. And maybe the chance is a good one. It might not be, but then you got to just keep going and figure it out. Now that I'm in higher ed, I hear about all these great authors and all these great books that they're writing. And Angela Duckworth is an author at Penn who wrote a book called Grit. And she basically talks about how success is grit, is passion and perseverance. Your willingness to pick yourself up despite a setback, despite a failure, and to keep on trying. So for all of you, I tell you to think about that. There are going to be bumps in the road. Don't get discouraged. Just, you know, do your soul searching and keep following whatever that passion is. And then for the women in the audience, I have to put in a pitch for Sheryl Sandberg, who wrote Lean In, if you haven't read it. She actually wrote another book, Plan B, recently, you know, where she talks about not sitting in the back row in a meeting, leaning in. Don't be ashamed to speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up. And despite she lost her husband at a very young, he was very young. And how do you climb yourself out of that setback? So you can talk about your accomplishments. There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't brag about them. Talk about the collective accomplishments. Recognize your staff. Don't be a show-off, but make people know what you and your teams have accomplished. There's nothing wrong with that. People cannot read your mind. They may not know. Dr. Gutman not only talked about this, I tried to stay apolitical. Dr. Gutman, who's the president of Penn, wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Spirit of Compromise, in an attempt to see if we can harken back to the days when political parties worked together to advance an agenda in the Reagan years. So, you know, compromising is an essential element, listening to your colleagues, listening to your friends, your families, and trying to find a middle ground. I also, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, I wholeheartedly agree that we have to give back to our communities. Whatever your time, treasure, or talents, if you don't have monetary resources, you can give of your time. It's really important that we work within our communities and that we be recognized for working within our communities. We're not an island unto ourselves. We're part of a bigger community. And you get so much back. You think you're giving a lot. Over time, you get so much more back. It's immeasurable what you get back from those relationships and that offering. So back to where we started. Athena is said to have a calm temperament. I'm not sure that totally applies to me, although I am told at work that I'm calm. Tough, clever, independent, moving slowly to anger, only fighting for just causes, with a purpose, protecting the polis, city, creator of the olive tree, so there's a little landscape in there, standing for truth, justice, and moral values. I only hope that her example and that of my parents will continue to inspire me to continue their legacy in my life's work, community service, and philanthropy. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for him? We got that from Q&A.
Come on. Come on. I don't know.
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about a specific challenge that has come your way at UPenn that you didn't have a background for in the city?
Yeah. So, you know, I went to college and I have my MBA, but my degrees are not from Ivy League pedigree institutions. You know, I went to a state university for undergraduate and City University for graduate school. So, you know, I certainly got the job. I was offered the job, but I would say that I felt, and it might have been my own insecurity, that I didn't necessarily measure up to the academic peers that I was going to be working with. But what I learned very quickly is it's not just where you go to school. It's what you do with the education and the degree that you have. So, you know, the fact that I worked at the World Trade Center Memorial, that to them was like, oh my God, she can work in New York. We're just Philadelphia. You know, which is a much smaller city. It's the fifth largest city in the country, but, you know, in population, it's 1.5 million compared to, at the time, New York was 10. I think it's up to 12 now. So I think it's okay to feel the insecurity. Just be prepared for how you're going to respond to that. So I'll go to one other example in my city career. I'm a landscape architect. I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. And I was acting commissioner of the Department of Design and Construction. I was first deputy commissioner before that. A lot of the architects and the engineers on the staff were like, well, how can she run that department? This is an engineering and building department. She's a landscape architect. You know, and even my boss today at Penn asked my predecessor boss, so, you know, she's a landscape architect. You know, she's not a PE, she's not an RA. Can she do the job? And my former boss from the city said, look at what she's done. Don't just look at, you know, the tags. So at a certain point early in your career, the degree obviously matters a lot, but I think it matters more because of the network of your school and what that brings to you. So take advantage of that network. Both times when I wanted to move jobs, I went back to my undergraduate college and asked them at the office, do you have any jobs, you know, that people have sent you? And they sent me folders of 25 positions because alums send the jobs to, you know, they want to help alums. So there, you know, I really, you have to take advantage, and I go back to the, it's okay to feel insecure, just practice, learn, you know, prepare yourself so that you have an answer to that question. Nobody's the perfect candidate for any job. If my boss always says, if you were the perfect candidate and had everything, you wouldn't want the job. Because everybody wants to grow in their next job. So, I think I answered the question. So, anybody else? We can talk one-on-one later if you want to.